Cambridgeshire still hides deeper chills. Behind grand houses, ancient churches, and quiet rivers, spirits walk unseen. Join us as we reveal 10 more haunted places where the past refuses to rest. Hinchingbrook House. On the western edge of Huntingdon stands Hinchingbrook House, a grand red brick mansion with gables and stone towers that trace their origins back to a 12th century Benedictine nunnery. By day, its lawns and archways are serene, admired by visitors for their Tudor splendor. But when evening descends and the house empties, the past seems to wake and walk its corridors. Many speak first of a phantom monk, robed and hooded, who drifts through the reception room and chapel. He is described as silent, but unmistakably present. One witness in the 1960s stayed overnight during renovation work and fled before dawn after encountering the figure. He never again set foot in that chamber. Then there is the White Lady said to cross the grounds or glide along the nearby road. A sighting during the 1940s was preceded by a piercing scream that froze listeners in place. Older legends tell of a floating woman on the staircase, a cavalier slain in battle appearing in the very room of his death, and a phantom dog that pads soundlessly through the cloisters. The house itself seems alive to its memories. Workmen who left tools neatly arranged during the 1960s and 70s renovations often returned to find them moved from room to room, though the doors had been locked. Echoes of whispering voices, children's laughter, and light footsteps drift through deserted hallways. Some guests report the faint smell of candle wax or pipe smoke lingering where no flame has burned. Local tradition suggests that centuries of upheaval, monastic devotion, Tudor ambition, and the turmoil of the English Civil War have left imprints on the very stones. Whether these are spirits bound to the site or memories replayed by the building itself, the effect is the same. Hinchingbrook seems unwilling to let go of its ghosts. By daylight, the house hosts guided tours and celebrations, a jewel of Cambridgeshire's heritage. But when twilight gathers and the last carriages depart, the spectral monk, the screaming White Lady, and unseen children at play make Hinchingbrooke House a place where history feels startlingly present and where the line between past and present grows perilously thin. The George Hotel. In the quiet village of Buckton stands the George Hotel, a coaching inn whose timbered frontage and low-beamed ceilings carry the weight of 4 centuries. By daylight, it is a warm retreat for travelers and locals alike. Yet after midnight, the mood changes, and the inn becomes a stage for specters drawn from England's darker folklore. The most famous tale concerns the outlaw, Dick Turpin, and his fabled black horse, Black Bess. Long after his 18th century exploits ended on the gallows, riders have seen a ghostly horse and rider gallop up the high street and vanish at the inn's door. Some hear only the thunder of hooves, a sound that dies abruptly as though swallowed by the walls. Inside certain rooms are notorious. Rooms 100, 104, 105, 106, and 112 have all been linked to unexplained events. Guests wake to find bedclothes lifted away or legs pinched by unseen fingers. Doors unlock and swing open without a key. Among these, room 106 has the bleak honor of being called the worst affected. Stranger still are encounters with shadowed figures. A man in a tricorn hat and black cloak has been glimpsed pacing the corridor, his face lost beneath a wide brim. Others describe a woman on the staircase who fades like mist when approached. One guest in the 1980s was jolted awake by violent banging on his door and a man's voice shouting, "Bella," followed by the patter of a child running through the room, yet no one was there. Though quieter today, staff still report the occasional sudden draft, distant footsteps, or muffled laughter when the inn should be still. Some believe Turpin himself keeps watch restless in the place where legend says he once hid from the law. By day, the George Hotel remains a welcoming stop for travelers on the old Great North Road. But when the market square empties and the inn settles for the night, the echo of phantom riders and playful but unseen guests suggests that the past here is never fully at rest. Oliver Cromwell's house. In the cathedral city of Ely stands Oliver Cromwell's house, a timber-framed dwelling that once served as the family home of the man who helped shape 17th century England. Its crooked beams and shadowed rooms now form a museum to Cromwell's turbulent life. But when the last visitors depart and the evening mists creep from the fens, the house is said to welcome other guests, those long departed. Caretakers speak of a brooding male presence that lingers in the upper rooms. At quiet hours, measured footsteps cross the boards above, stopping and starting as though someone deep in thought is pacing the chamber. On cold nights, a sudden draft slides along the stairwell without any earthly cause. Some believe this is Cromwell himself, returning to the place where he once plotted and prayed. Yet the house holds more than one phantom. A woman in a long blue dress, keys jangling at her waist, has been glimpsed moving from room to room, her figure half lost in shadow. In one bedroom, a mist-grey silhouette has appeared briefly beside the bed, only to dissolve before a word can be spoken. Visitors have found shoelaces mysteriously untied, a small but unnerving reminder that something unseen walks close. Other stories tell of soldiers from the Civil War, their soft bootsteps followed by the creak of a door that opens and closes on its own. At times, an unfamiliar scent, wood smoke, old leather, or the iron tang of gunpowder briefly sharpens the air and vanishes. Historians point to the house's long and restless past, the family tensions, political conspiracies, and the heavy moral weight Cromwell carried as Lord Protector. Whether these echoes are lingering memories or watchful spirits, few doubt that the building retains an energy that defies the quiet of its present use. By daylight, Oliver Cromwell's house is a place of education and heritage. But when Ely's cathedral bells toll across a sleeping city, the soft tread of invisible boots and the cold breath of a centuries old will suggest that its most famous resident may never have entirely left. Addenbrooke's Hospital. On the southern edge of Cambridge stands Addenbrooke's Hospital, a vast modern complex where thousands of lives begin and end each year. By day, it is a place of science and urgency, but when night settles and the wards grow, still staff and patients alike speak of presences no medicine can explain. The most enduring legend is that of the spectral nurse. Pale and silent, she is said to appear at the bedside of patients receiving morphine, her face a mask of sorrow. Some believe she once worked here and in a tragic mistake administered too high a dose, leaving her bound in remorse to repeat her rounds forever. Nurses on night duty tell of a sudden drop in temperature and the faint rustle of skirts before the apparition fades. Other stories abound. Lights flick on without a switch being touched, televisions change channel on their own, and taps begin to run, though the handles remain closed. Paper cups are sometimes discovered stacked in perfect towers on counters that moments before were bare. Call buzzers sound from empty rooms. When staff investigate, the wards lie silent and dark. One patient recovering from surgery reported waking to find a glass of water set neatly on the bedside table, though no nurse had entered and the door remained locked. A porter on a late shift followed the echo of footsteps along a corridor only to reach a dead end and an unbroken silence. Some attribute these happenings to the sheer weight of human experience within the hospital's walls, birth suffering, and sudden death, leaving an imprint that no renovation can erase. Others speak of more personal haunting souls unwilling to leave the place of their final moments, or caregivers driven to atone for an ancient error. By morning, Addenbrooke returns to the bustle of a world-class hospital. But in the deep hours before dawn, when machines hum softly and the city sleeps, the whisper of unseen footsteps and the quiet vigil of a remorseful nurse remind all who keep watch that healing and haunting can share the same ground. Ely Cathedral, rising like a great stone ship above the flat fens, Ely Cathedral is one of England's most awe-inspiring medieval churches. Its vast nave, lantern tower, and delicate Lady Chapel draw pilgrims and travelers by day. But when twilight sinks into the misty marshes and the last bells fade, the cathedral becomes a theater of ghosts and ancient memory. For centuries, witnesses have spoken of monks who walked the North Triforium and the 14th century choir stalls gliding silently through arches where no living brother has kept vigil for hundreds of years. In the old stained glass museum and on the lawns near the gates, shadowed figures in robes are seen pacing slowly, their heads bowed in endless devotion. Among these apparitions, one stands out for its unease, an unpleasant monk with no face. He has been reported in the deanery, his cowl drawn low over a featureless void. Those who meet this vision describe an instant chill and a heavy pressure in the air, as if the very stones hold their breath. Legends also tell of Saint Etheldreda, the 7th century abbess, who founded the monastery that became Ely Cathedral. Her presence is said to linger most strongly in the prior's house, where a strange blue hand runs up and down the banister of the rear staircase. In moonlight, the soft glow of that phantom hand has startled late-working staff and vergers. Other figures add to the mystery: a ghostly priest who walks with a candle through the cloisters, and a silent nun whose light seems to hover ahead of her as she moves through the Lady Chapel. Footsteps echo along deserted aisles. Doors close without wind, and sometimes the scent of cold incense hangs in the air long after service has ended. Scholars speak of centuries of devotion, political intrigue, and upheaval, the dissolution of the monastery's civil war, and the relentless passage of pilgrims. Perhaps these walls have simply recorded their own history and play it back in sound and shadow. By day, Ely Cathedral is a place of worship and wonder. But when night folds over the fens and the great lantern fades into mist, the faceless monk, the blue hand of Etheldreda, and the soft chant of unseen choirs remind us that holiness and haunting can share the same sacred ground. Byron's Pool, hidden on the quiet outskirts of Cambridge, Byron's Pool is a secluded reach of the River Cam, where willows lean low and water flows in dark, gentle eddies. By day, the spot is a nature reserve, alive with birdsong and the rustle of reeds. Yet when dusk steals the color from the meadow and mist rises from the water, the place takes on a presence far older and stranger than its peaceful surface suggests. The pool is named for the poet Lord Byron, who often came here during his time in Cambridge to swim and brood in solitude. Local legend says that Byron's passion for these waters ran so deep that part of his spirit still lingers on the banks. Fishermen have spoken of a slender figure with a flowing cloak and untamed hair standing at the water's edge, watching the moonlit current. When approached, the vision slips away like a ripple and is gone. Others tell of sudden splashing sounds on still nights, as if someone had dived beneath the surface. No circles widen on the water, and no swimmer breaks the dark glass. A soft whisper of verse, unintelligible but musical, has been reported by late walkers who swear no one else was near. One winter evening, a couple crossing the small footbridge heard a low, melancholy humming, then saw a faint light moving against the current, a glow that vanished with a quiet sigh. The air around them turned unexpectedly cold, and their dog refused to set paw on the bridge until the mist cleared. Some imagine these manifestations as Byron himself returning to his beloved haunt, restless in death as he was in life. Others believe the fenland waters, rich in history and tragedy, simply echo the countless lives and drownings along the Cam. By morning, the pool resumes its calm, a refuge for wildlife and quiet contemplation. But under moonlight and drifting fog, when the reeds whisper and an unseen swimmer seems to move just out of sight, Byron's pool becomes a meeting place of poetry and the supernatural, where words and water share the secrets of eternity. Madingley Hall, set among ancient trees and quiet lawns west of Cambridge, Madingley Hall, is a grand Tudor mansion built in 1543. Today, it houses university conferences and visiting scholars, yet its long galleries and walled gardens are steeped in stories far older than any lecture. When Christmas draws near and the air grows sharp, the house is said to waken to a gathering of ghosts. Foremost among them is Ursula Hind, wife of the hall's builder. Legend says that on Christmas Eve she walks in distress between the mansion and the site of a demolished church. Her grief, people believe, springs from the act of her son, who tore down St. Etheldreda's church for stone and timber during the dissolution of the monasteries. Witnesses describe a tall figure in Tudor dress crossing the frost-silvered lawns, head bowed and face veiled, fading as she reaches the old churchyard. She is not alone. Around the same season, an old lady, cotton-clad in black, is said to stride up the drive, her purpose known only to herself. In the cloisters, a young bride in white wanders, silently thought to be a woman whose betrothed died just before their wedding, leaving her to die of a broken heart. Other visions carry a more boisterous note, a phantom Tudor revel with music and laughter echoing faintly from empty chambers. 3 cavaliers in richly colored coats strolling the flower garden as if still on royal business. And most unnerving, a gaunt man with a skull-like face and a look of malice seen at dusk near the orchard wall. Staff speak of doors opening into still rooms, scented suddenly of old wood smoke, or of footsteps keeping pace behind them along deserted corridors. Historians suggest that Madingley's centuries of faith celebration and sorrow have left their mark, so that memory itself drifts through its stones. Visitors may come for study or retreat, but on winter nights, when the moon lifts over the chimneys and frost whitens the lawns, the restless Hind family and their ghostly companions seem to reclaim the house, turning scholarship back into haunting. The Queen's Head. South of Cambridge, in the quiet village of Harston, stands the Queen's Head, a centuries-old inn whose tiled roof and low doorways speak of long English evenings and countless travelers' tales. By day, it is a cheerful public house with laughter in the snug and warm light spilling across the road. But as night deepens and the last guests drift home, the mood can shift in a heartbeat. For generations, locals have whispered of a grey lady who moves silently along the road past the pub. She is described as tall and slight, dressed in a mist-colored gown that seems to absorb the moonlight. On certain nights, she is seen walking steadily towards the nearby bridge, head bowed as though carrying an invisible burden. What chills witnesses most is what follows. As she reaches the center of the bridge, she pauses for a moment, then casts herself into the black water below. There is no splash, no widening circle, only the dark flow of the river, unbroken and silent. Moments later, the bridge lies empty and the road returns to stillness. Drivers passing after closing time have braked sharply, certain they had glimpsed a pedestrian about to step into their path. When they look back, the road is bare. One late cyclist swore he heard the soft rush of skirts and a sudden sob beside him, though he was alone under the stars. Pub staff speak of doors that swing open to a night breeze that does not exist, and of faint weeping heard in the quiet between last orders and dawn. Folklore suggests the Grey Lady may have been a woman betrayed by a lover or crushed by grief, ending her life in the cold water centuries ago. Others believe the river itself remembers every tragedy along its banks and sometimes replays its saddest scenes for those willing or unlucky enough to see. By daylight, the Queen's Head is lively and welcoming, a beloved stop for locals and travelers alike. Yet when the moon climbs over Harston and the lane lies empty, the silent figure on the bridge returns to her final walk, binding the inn and river to a sorrow that time cannot wash away. St. Peter's Church, nestled amid quiet meadows and winding lanes near Cambridge St. Peter's Church in Babraham, seems at first a picture of village calm. Its medieval tower rises over lichen-covered stones, and the surrounding churchyard rests beneath centuries of yew and ash. Yet, as dusk falls and the last birdsong fades, an older presence begins to stir among the graves and shadowed aisles. Parishioners and nighttime visitors speak most often of a Victorian woman who roams the churchyard. She is described as slender and pale, dressed in mourning black, her figure gliding soundlessly between leaning headstones. On misty evenings, she has been seen pausing at particular graves as though in sorrow, before vanishing behind the low wall or into the trees beyond. Inside the church itself, the atmosphere deepens. Choristers rehearsing late have reported hearing a clear soprano voice join the hymn, pure and bright, only for the sound to melt into silence when they stop to listen. Others describe the sudden scent of delicate perfume, sweet yet fleeting, wafting through the nave when no flowers stand upon the altar. On one winter evening, a verger locking the vestry heard soft footsteps crossing the flagstones behind him. Expecting a delayed visitor, he turned, but the aisle lay empty. The latch of the vestry door rattled gently, though no draught stirred the heavy air. He later recalled a feeling of quiet expectancy, as though someone unseen waited patiently for him to leave. Folklore offers several possibilities. Some say the Victorian lady mourns a lost child or husband buried nearby. Others believe she is bound to the church by a promise unkept, a devotion that outlasted her mortal life. The ethereal soprano voice, too, may be hers, singing a hymn for eternity, or perhaps an echo from generations of worship still impressed upon the stones. By daylight, St. Peter's Church remains a gentle place of prayer and history, its windows glowing with colored light. Yet when night gathers over Babraham and mist curls low among the graves, the unseen singer and the solitary mourner seem to reclaim their vigil, reminding all who enter that devotion, and grief can linger long after the living have gone. Museum of Cambridge. At the edge of the old Castle Hill stands the Museum of Cambridge, a 17th-century timber-framed house whose crooked beams and narrow staircases preserve centuries of local life. By day, its galleries bustle with school groups and history lovers. But when the doors are locked and the evening settles over the city, the museum seems to remember more than its exhibits can show. Caretakers speak of footsteps echoing across the upper floors, slow and deliberate, when every room stands empty. Doors that were bolted tight at closing are sometimes found ajar in the morning, and display cases have been discovered unlatched, though their locks remain unbroken. It is as if someone unseen continues an endless inspection of the house's secrets. The most enduring legend tells of a Civil War soldier thought to have died nearby during 17th century skirmishes. He has been glimpsed on the main staircase, where a hidden chamber was once found, a tall figure in faded uniform who lingers for a breath before vanishing into the paneled wall. Some visitors describe a sudden smell of smoke and gunpowder, a fleeting scent that belongs to no present fire. There are gentler presences too. A faint child's laugh drifts through the upper gallery, where toys from centuries past are displayed. Late working staff have felt a soft brush at the shoulder or the hem of a coat tugged lightly, as though a curious youngster still roams among the dolls and wooden soldiers. At times, a low murmur of voices, too soft to make out words, seems to rise from the ancient floorboards themselves. Historians note that the building has served as an inn, a merchant's home, and a gathering place through wars and plagues. Each layer of its past may have left an imprint, a living memory replayed in shadow and sound. Whether spirits or echoes, the effect is the same. The house refuses to sleep. By morning, the Museum of Cambridge opens again to curious crowds and the hum of the modern city. Yet when night enfolds Castle Hill and the last footstep fades, the soldiers' silent watch and the playful whispers of unseen children remind us that history here is not merely displayed, it still walks the floors. Cambridgeshire's shadows never truly fade. Smash the like button, share your ghost stories below, and subscribe to Creepy Experience for the next spine-chilling haunted journey.